The Carolina Storyteller is a campfire-style storytelling podcast covering ghost stories, legends, and true crime. Some content may not be suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Carolina Storyteller. I am Jonathan Phoenix, the Carolina Storyteller. We've gone a little rebranding. Instead of being, let me tell you a story, we're going to the Carolina Storyteller. It just makes it easier for people to find, and it's who I am. So, let me adjust this camera here real quick. Tonight, we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of doing a regular paranormal, we're kind of venturing into true crime, but it has paranormal elements into it that happened both before and after the crime. And it's definitely a legend in American history. So it's definitely something that's in our wheelhouse, but it's kind of off to the side of our wheelhouse. Could start our venture into true crime later. I don't know. I've never done a lot of true crime, but, you know, who knows? I might do some true crime. But we're going to be talking about the Tate murders. Now, for these murders, I'm not going to name the killers. I don't believe the killers deserve any more notoriety than they've already received. I will refer to them as male subject, female subject, leader, things like that. I may name the entire group at one point in time, but that's about it. I will be talking about the victims because I think that's who deserves to have their story told and who deserves to be focused on. The assholes that committed these horrible atrocities, they don't deserve any more fame than they've gotten in their lives or after their lives. So we're just ignoring who they really are, and we want to focus on the men and women that were killed on this horrible night in 1969. So let's take you back. We're going to take you back actually to 1968. Shannon Tate had just come off of filming Valley of Dolls. She was a Golden Globe Award-winning actress. She was up and coming, and she meets Roman Polanski, who is a director. They start this Roman romance, and they get married. And shortly after they get married, Shannon has this nightmare of her and her ex, Jay Sebring, having their throats slit. And she wakes up and she tells a reporter about this, just talking about it. And this is allegedly. Now, it's not 100% confirmed, but it adds a spookiness to what happened a year later. Because a year later, on August 8th, 1969, Shannon Tate and some of her friends returned to her home in Los Angeles, California, on CeeLo Drive. Her friends were, of course, Jay Sebring, a friend of Roman Polanski's called Wojciech Frykowski, and I probably murdered that name, and his girlfriend Abigail Folger, who is the heiress to the Folgers' fortune. Also on the property was the caretaker and his friend Stephen Parent, who were there. Parent was there hanging out with the caretaker of this property. I mean, this is a big Hollywood home for a big Hollywood star. So there was an actual property caretaker that stayed there and took care of it. Now, around 10:30 p.m., after going out to eat and everything, a very pregnant, 8 months pregnant to be exact, Shannon and her companions, which included Jay Frykowski and Abigail, returned to the home to kind of turn in for the night. This is when the attackers made their way to the home. They parked down at the end of the drive by the gate, away from the house where they couldn't be seen, and snuck up around the side and over some bushes. They were trying to get to the house unseen, but Stephen Parent was actually driving the grounds for some reason. To this day, we still don't know. And he happened upon the group of murderers. The male subject, it was one male, 3 females, approached Parent, held him at gunpoint, threatened him. Parent said that, you know, hey, don't shoot me, I'll do whatever you want. And they were under orders to basically make this look as brutal as possible. So the male subject lunged at Parent with a knife, causing him to have a defensive wound across his hand, where basically it just cut the palm of his hand practically in half. and then shot Parent 4 times, leaving his body there dead. They then pushed Parent's car back up the hill to in front of the main house, where they used it for cover as the male subject cut out the screen in a window, climbed in through the window, and then let 2 of the female subjects into the front door while the third stood guard outside. The first person they encountered was Frykowski. He was asleep on the couch there in the living room. The male subject kicked him in the head. When Frykowski asked, "What are you doing? Who are you?" The male subject replied, "I am the devil and I'm here to do the devil's business." Tied him up with a towel. Went and got his girlfriend, tied her up, and went and got Tate and Sebring and brought them out to the living room. So they gathered everybody in the living room. They put a neck around rope, not a neck. He already had a neck. They put a rope around his neck. They put this rope around Sebring's neck and threw it up over a banister, and then put the same rope around Tate's neck. And they were being very rough with Tate. They were being very rough with all of them. But Sebring took offense to it and was like, "You can't treat her like that. She's 8 months pregnant." In response to that, the male subject shot him. Not killing him, but wounding him severely. They then left the 2 of them bound by this rope around their neck, and basically, if they went to go either, they were pulling on each other. Basically, they were literally held in place by each other's weight. Literally, if Sebring moved, he would strangle Tate. If Tate moved, she would strangle Sebring. It was definitely a torturous type of being held. Folger escaped from the girl that was holding her, and so she took off running, trying to get away. The girl proceeded after her, jumped upon her, and then proceeded to stab her over 20 some odd times, just continuously stabbing at her. Of course, meanwhile, Frykowski, he's tied up with a towel. He breaks free and he decides that he's going to fight. He puts up a fight, and ends up, for his trouble, getting beaten in the head with the handgun from the male subject so badly that it bent the barrel of the handgun, broke the clip, damaged some other part of it, and then after getting beaten with a handgun, he was stabbed 51 times. The murderers then turned their attention to Sebring, who received, I believe it was a total of 28 stab wounds, where they just brutally just stabbed him, even though he was already dying from a gunshot wound. They just finished him off, brutally. And then they turned to Tate, who initially begged for her life, offering to go as a hostage, anything just to live long enough to carry out her pregnancy and that her child be born. That's all she wanted. She wanted to be alive enough to give birth to her son or daughter, which back then she didn't know. I don't think that they did an ultrasound. There was no mention that she knew what it was, but she just wanted her child to come into the world. And they stabbed her about 52 times. They then proceeded to destroy the house, and in blood of the victims, they wrote messages like political piggy and pig all over the place. The goal that they were sent there by their leader was to commit the most horrible, atrocious crime possible, and make it be believed that it was racially motivated and politically motivated, in hopes of starting a race war. The 3 women would be referred to as Charlie's Angels at some point in time, simply because of how devoted they were to their leader and to the male subject that was instructing them on how to commit these murders and how to do the house. And they would go on the next night to actually murder another family before they were captured. So this wasn't a one night thing, but we're talking about the Tate murders, particularly because before this happened, a year before, Shannon Tate envisioned that her throat would be slit, as would Jay Sebring's. And one of the injuries that they did find was that both of their throats were slit. Excuse me, sorry. Now, proceeding this, after all this happened, of course, the murderers were captured, along with their leader. It was a cult, murderous cult. Yes, they did exist, and there was one, the Manson family. They were all found guilty and sentenced to death. The one girl that stayed outside was able to bear witness, as well as the caretaker, who woke up the next morning to find his friend dead, and then entered the house to find all of the people in the house dead. So they were the two first witnesses to what happened. They were all, including the leader, were all sentenced to death and died in prison. There was no end to the war that Shannon Tate's mother put to make sure that these people never got out of jail, never got out of prison, and never saw the light of day for what they had done. She went to every parole hearing, every chance that she had, she went there. Shannon Tate was 26 years old when she died. A very young actress with a very promising career. Roman Polanski, her husband, sold basically everything he owned. He said he could not bear to have anything that reminded him of the happiest time in his life that he had lost so tragically. He lost his wife, he lost his child, in the blink of an eye, and it was for nothing more than a madman's lust for power. There wasn't anything, there was no anger, no vengeance. This was just somebody wanting to kill and hurt people. And like I said, that's why I don't want to throw out his name or his associates' names, because I have to tell you, they don't deserve the publicity. They don't. This was a brutal killing. But afterwards, rumors began to spiral that there were paranormal activity going on in the house. There was rumors of sightings of Tate, sightings of Sebring, rumors that cabinet doors would open, cold spots, noises would be heard. Since 1969, there have been a number of paranormal investigations in the house looking for the ghost of Shannon Tate, the spirit that is supposedly left there longing to have lived a life with her child, haunting the home. And it's even been explored by shows like Ghost Adventurers. It's been the topic of major Hollywood films like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Shannon Tate Haunting. A lot of people are like, oh, well, these are Hollywood movies, so they're not really real. But this was a really real event that really happened. And the rumors of the haunting are very real. So, making films about it is keeping Shannon Tate's legacy alive. But it's also making people kind of go, well, it's Hollywood. It's not, no, it actually happened. This is some real stuff, and people do say that these events are happening at this house, or at least they were until the house was torn down, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. There were ghostly sounds. People saw apparitions. Wow, that looked weird. They had cold spots. They'd hear knocking at night. Some people said they even heard the screams of Shannon Tate at night, which is kind of interesting, because if you think about it, if the rumor is true that before the murders even happened, Shannon envisioned her death with Jay Sebring, at the hands of these monsters. And then after her death, she has stayed on the property. This is just really kind of a paranormal sandwich around a horrible tragedy. That really just, there's no sense to it. And you could understand why a spirit would be stuck in a place when your life has ended so abruptly for no good reason at all. There was no reason for the brutality and just the senseless violence that ended this beautiful woman's life. So folks, that's today's story. Hopefully you didn't find it too terrifying. Hopefully you didn't mind that it was a bit of true crime, and hopefully you understand that it is still a bit of paranormal. The Shannon Tate murders are probably one of the darkest marks during American history in the modern era. It marks the end of the 60s. Literally everybody says that is when the 60s officially ended. You know, the time of peace, love, and happiness. Those murders kind of destroyed that, because Shannon Tate and Polanski, they embodied that part of Americana, and their deaths at the hands of these monsters essentially ended that. That was the end for the hippies, and of course this was also the rise of the Vietnam era, so we were getting ready to go into something far, far worse for the world at large, and something that carried on well into the 80s, I guess, is just how bad things went after August 9th, 1969. So, folks, again, that's the story. Thank you guys for listening. Remember, if you guys want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/Carolina Storyteller. $3 a month. You can join and support the podcast. You can get exclusive items. You can get to listen to some really good backstage stuff. There's all kinds of early release info and things like that, and you get to find out where I'm going and what I'm doing. Even if you just go and follow for free, you can still see when these updates pop up, and maybe once you decide that you want to find out what some of that is, you can hit that subscribe button. And if you don't want to join the Patreon, but you still want to be able to show off that you love the Carolina Storyteller, we've got merch now. That's right, we have a sticker and a t-shirt that's out. The t-shirt is the Lavanya Was Framed, and of course the sticker is the Carolina Storyteller logo, which you guys can get at thecarolinastoryteller.com right now. Anyway, that's our show. Stay spooky, my friends.